I can't stand Waffle House. I'm not gonna lie. It's like one of my least favorite things of all time. Appreciate the likes. Man, I love to debate some Muslims or hear what they have to say. So I appreciate you hitting the likes just to get it out there, so I can get somebody here to join and talk about it. Appreciate the share. How we doing today? Do people really just like do they scroll lives? Do y'all do that? Do you like scroll lives on TikTok? I feel like I never do that. I only see them when they pop up in my regular feed. I don't like scroll through lives.
Choose your fighter. Wait.
Not feeling that. This is better. What is media vita? I'm also streaming on YouTube, so I don't want to play anything that would like mess with YouTube. Come to Man City. I'll be in London this summer. I will be in London this summer for a little bit. Like I said, I'm also streaming over on YouTube, so I'm just playing some like general non-copyright music. Let's see if I can get somebody. I have been to Speaker's Corner. I've been twice, and I did end up debating a Muslim apologist on Speaker's Corner once. That was interesting. He wasn't ready. He was not ready. I'll say that. But I'll go to Speaker's Corner again when I go to England. I'll go to Speaker's Corner again. But I probably won't engage in. Probably won't engage. Balloon Batum, what's up? Trying to get some Muslims in here to debate. What denomination? Man, I don't have one. I don't know. Like obviously I have a church that I go to. Like I said, I'm streaming over on YouTube, so I don't want to, I can turn it down. That's why it worked. Is that better? Hear me better now? Convince you at the pop in? Oh, somebody already hopped in. Open up. Hi, how old are you?
18 years of age.
All right. You gonna convince me to be a Muslim?
Yeah, what are you looking for?
Really just kind of your reason. Why are you a Muslim? Why do you think I should be one?
Yo, I love the food. I love that you can have more than one wife. I love the people. And that's why.
Okay, well, I mean, You technically
What?
don't have to be a Muslim to eat the cultural food, or
I guess so,
or
but it
know the
kind of comes.
people. Uh, and then I think the idea of having multiple wives is just immoral. So that's not convincing me.
You think it's immoral?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why? What makes it immoral?
I just don't think that that is the way that God has intended us to live.
How so?
Marriage is between one man and one woman, and there is a union in that marriage that ultimately, especially as a Christian, it actually represents the relationship between Jesus and his people. And
Do
so that
you think? Uh,
what?
are you married? Are you
Yeah,
married?
I am married.
Do you really think you can be with one wife forever? 'Cause I can't imagine being able to do that.
Yes, I can. One and two. You're only. You said you're only 18.
Yeah.
Like once you get married, like it's better. You share a intimate relationship with somebody that is unique. In splitting that, it's just going to cause issues. There's just no way around it.
But if you love them all equally, it could work, right?
Dude, I
Or
don't think
you-
so, man. I don't think so.
yeah. Would you
But
now? Yeah. All right. Forget the negative, right? Imagine there was no negative. Would you rather have one wife or two wives? If there's no negative, be honest.
there is a negative, and I still would only rather have one wife. I'm already in the experience of marriage, so I can tell you that I do not want to add another person into it. I also don't think it's logically possible to do it without without there being negative.
How long have you been married?
I've been married for almost a year now.
Oh, dude, you have no idea, man.
I have no idea. You
One,
have
no,
no idea, bro.
yeah,
You
yeah.
have zero idea.
One, you
You tell
cannot
me
tell
I
me.
have no idea. You have zero idea. Let me ask you this question: do you have people in your life that you know that are polygamous?
Uh, Meaning that they sleep with multiple people?
Yeah. No, like that they're married to multiple people.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
Muslim. What do you think?
You know, in recent history, polygamy is always it's always a sign of a cult. Just to throw that out there.
A cult? What? What do you mean? Where are you getting this from?
It's just typically tied to cults and cult leaders. They're typically polygamous.
Well, cult leaders also eat and drink food. Does that mean I shouldn't drink food?
What'd you say?
Well, cult leaders also do a lot of things. They eat and drink food, right? Or they they eat and they drink water.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean I can do
it's a morally neutral thing, though. But other than that, right? You're not going to convince me via polygamy. So, can
that.
you have another reason why I should be a Muslim?
Yeah, well, let me just to make it easier. What are you looking for exactly that you haven't already found in Christianity, right? So I can convince you. So clearly, you're asking if there's something missing, right? Or am I misinterpreting that?
Uh, I don't feel like anything is missing, but here's what I know is that you believe that Islam is true, correct?
Yeah,
So I simply want to know why you believe that it's true because I care about what is true. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
I believe. Yeah, I believe. I think it's the most logical religion there is. I watched what's this guy called? Alex O'Connor. He kind of described a little to me, and whenever he's debating Christians, he's always doing a lot worse than he's debating Muslims, right? Well, I mean the opposite. He's doing a lot worse when he's debating Muslims than when he's debating Christians. And I just found that interesting because you can't argue against the Trinity in Islam because there is no Trinity, right? And it's kind of the most simplistic religion there is.
Yes, simplicity doesn't mean it's true. And what do you mean by most logical? Because I think that there's some issues in the Quran.
I think it's the most reasonable, right? There's one God. He sent prophets out there. He didn't need to be go into the form of a human to do that. He just sent his prophets to do so. And he preached peaceful things. He wanted to spread Islam peacefully, and yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I think I've got some issues with the Quran. which I really think is the crux of the religion.
Let me hear it.
I think it clearly copies older texts, and which is a major problem if it's supposed to be a direct revelation from Allah to Muhammad. It shouldn't be doing these things.
Copies from Christianity, copies from Christianity.
It's clearly copying from the Old Testament and the New Testament, but even more concerning is it copies from texts that are rejected by Christians that are clearly historically inaccurate and heretical.
Well, here's what I'll tell you, man, and this is something that surprised me too. I didn't know this beforehand, but I recently found out. Islam claims that the Bible and the Torah are books from God, but these books were corrupted according to Islam, right? So I think maybe that gave you some clarifications to that.
Yeah, I know that Muslims say that the Torah and the Injil are corrupted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter to me though, because it doesn't matter in regards to this topic whether or not Christianity is true to be convinced to be a Muslim. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, right?
Right, I can just put Christianity on hold. That doesn't matter. The question is, why should I be a Muslim? And can I draw back around to some of those issues in the Quran?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
So in the Quran, Jesus is presented as someone who takes clay birds, or he takes clay, he forms them into birds, and then he brings them to life. You aware of that text?
I was aware that he did some miracles, not that one specifically. Though.
Have you read the Quran?
Yeah, I've read parts of it. I haven't finished it though.
All right. Well,
it's long.
It's not that long. As a Muslim, you should read it.
I'm reading it. It's just a little long and it's in a different language. So, but I'm trying to finish it.
Okay, respect. Anyways, that same story is actually in another book. It's in a heretical Gnostic text called the Gospel of Thomas. And we know it's not from Thomas because they've dated it back to arguably the 2nd century, which is well after Thomas's life. And in chapter 2 of that book, Jesus does the same thing. And so historically, when we look at the text, we can see that whoever is writing in the Quran has copied this miracle from the Gospel of Thomas. The problem is that it's copying a miracle that Jesus never did. It's made up.
All right. How do you know it's made up?
Because it's accredited to an author who was already deceased. So that discredits it a little bit already. And then it's actually a story from his childhood. Okay? It's a story from his childhood about him as a child bringing clay birds to life on the Sabbath. Here's the funny thing about it, is that the original story is actually supposed to be a picture of Jesus being God, because he breathes life into the birds just as God breathes life into Adam. But we know that this text isn't true because it's accredited to somebody who wasn't alive during the time that it was written, and it's written about a part of Jesus's life that wasn't documented. And there's a reason why in the 1st century, when people had biographies written about them, they didn't record their childhoods. And the reason is because it was expensive to get paper and to write. So when they wrote biographies, they would only copy the most important parts of their life. So Jesus, we have the Gospels. It makes sense that the most important part of his life was his ministry, which is why there is a little bit about his birth, but 98 whatever percent of the Gospels is about Jesus in his ministry, right? So there's 2 very good reasons to reject the Gospel of Thomas. It's been rejected for centuries, and yet we have a clear story that both is in the Gospel of Thomas and the Quran. And the problem is, I'll let you respond, but that's not the only thing. So that's not the only one. It's not
What
the only
else?
example I can give.
What else?
There's the Arabic infancy gospel. So this was written shortly before the Quran. This is like, uh, I don't know, sometime like 6th century, And in that, there's a story about Jesus declaring who he is at birth. So in this story, Jesus declares that he is God from birth. All right? In the cradle. Right? You have the same story in the Quran. And what happens is Jesus declares who he is from birth. Now, the Quran changes it, and instead of it saying that he is the Son of God, or that he's, I think it even says like he's the Word. I could look it up. But instead of him declaring that, he declares that he's a prophet. So you see that the author of the Quran literally takes the story and just changes it to fit into the Quranic, I don't even know if that's a word, the narrative of the Quran.
Okay, I get you now. So you don't want to be a Muslim because you don't think it's true.
I don't trust the Quran.
How do you know that Christianity is true?
That's a great question, but that's not the topic of this. But do you want to get into that?
Yeah.
Well, let me just be, let me just say this. You can't, you can't know 100% if anything is true. Okay. You picking up what I'm putting down? Like I can't, like I know that I exist and that's about it. But if you ask me why I believe Christianity is true, it's because I think it is the best option for the data that we have. Right. And so let me put it like this. The core of Christianity is built around obviously Jesus, but importantly, his death and resurrection. Right?
Yeah.
Now, do you think that Jesus was crucified?
No.
No. Why not?
Because my book says he wasn't.
Right. So the Quran says that he wasn't. Okay. Yet, historically speaking, both sources inside of Christianity and outside of Christianity would attest that Jesus was crucified. And the only time it's going to show up is 600 years later, in 600 miles away, in this book, the Quran, that's going to say he wasn't. So, there's a question of why should I believe that over Tacitus and Josephus, first century non-Christian historians that acknowledge that Jesus is crucified. They have no skin in the game, and yet they're willing to acknowledge that he's crucified, right? So I think, and so I'm laying this out because you need to establish just the grounded facts, like the easy things to believe, if that makes sense. Like, was Jesus a real person? Did Jesus have a ministry? And then was Jesus crucified? Right? And those historically, other than Muslims, on the resurrection are not debated, or on the crucifixion are not debated. Right? You always have your weirdos out there who are like, oh, Jesus didn't exist or whatever, but you don't have a problem with that because you believe that Jesus existed. So, and so if Jesus was alive, he's an itinerant preacher, he's a prophet, he's the Messiah, right? All of these things. The question is, historically, can I believe that he was crucified? That answer is yes. Now, you can reject that, but I'm explaining why I think Christianity is true. The answer to that is yes, which then draws into the question, was Jesus resurrected? Right? Now, there's a multitude of ways you can go about this. I will give you what's called the minimalist facts argument. So these are things that everyone agrees upon historically, or the scholarly consensus. There's always going to be outliers. The scholarly consensus agrees upon these things. Are you ready? There's a few of them. One, that Jesus was crucified. So being a Muslim, you're already outside of the historical consensus. I just want to point that out. The historical consensus is that Jesus was crucified. Number two, that he was buried in a tomb. We can throw that in there. Number three is that women found his empty tomb. Okay. Number 4 is that his disciples believed that he was resurrected. So even non-Christian scholars will acknowledge that they may not think that Jesus resurrected, but they believe that his disciples thought he was resurrected. You tracking?
I'm tracking, yeah.
And then 5 would be that enemies of Christianity became Christians, which is a unique thing. It's one thing to be neutral, right? It's one thing to be neutral, but you have a guy like Paul who clearly was persecuting Christians, trying to put them in jail and trying to unalive them. And then he becomes a Christian and becomes the greatest Christian missionary, arguably of all time. And so those are the things that are like established facts. And no one has a problem with those because none of those things are supernatural. So even non-Christian, atheist, secular, whatever, nothing that I said there was supernatural. So then the question is, what's the best hypothesis? What's the best explanation for what has occurred? And I simply believe that it's the resurrection of Jesus, that he was resurrected. That's why I'm a Christian.
But how do you know he was resurrected?
Right. So you can't know. That's what I'm trying to make clear. Like, you can't know. All you can do is start throwing out the options. Okay. So if he really died on the cross, his body really was missing when the women showed up 3 days later. His disciples really believed that he resurrected. They even died for that. And Jewish people that hated the idea of Jesus being the Messiah became Christians. Now you've got to start throwing out some reasons for why this is happening. So there's other than the resurrection, there's some theories out there. Okay, there's the swoon theory. Do you know what that theory is?
No.
The swoon theory is the idea that, and this is kind of what some Muslims hold to. It depends. It kind of depends, but it's basically the idea. Actually, I don't want to botch this. I'm pretty sure because I just wanted to get these mixed up in my head. If that makes sense. Swoon theory is the theory that he just didn't die. So he did get crucified. Yeah. That he didn't die. Sorry, I just didn't want to give you some misinformation. That he didn't die. That's one. The other theory is that his disciples hid his body. The other theory, I guess, could be that the Romans hid his body, but that wouldn't make sense. And then kind of the other main theory is just group hallucination. So, yeah. And you can walk through those, okay? The reason why the Romans wouldn't hide his body, or if they did, as soon as his disciples started saying he was resurrected, what would they do to prove them wrong?
I don't know.
They just show the body, right? Like if the Romans hid his body and the disciples are saying, no, Jesus is actually resurrected, they just be like, no, he's not. We crucified him. He's over here. Look.
What if someone stole it?
Right. So that's the next one. Okay. It's the disciples stole his body, right? Some followers stole his body. One, a little hard to believe because at least from what we know, the tomb was guarded by Roman soldiers. So the idea of the disciples kind of being able to defeat these Roman soldiers and then move this gigantic stone that blocks the tomb in order to get his body, that's a little far-fetched. But let's just say they pulled that off, right? If they stole his body, when they start getting persecuted, what's the point of them continuing to say that Jesus was crucified?
Well, why does it have to be the disciples who stole the body? Why couldn't it be some random person trying to test if the theory was true?
I mean, you can throw that out there, but then you have to question motive. Why is a random person stealing? Like, let me give a little bit of context. The first century Second Temple Jews believed in a resurrection, but at a future time. They did not believe that the Messiah was going to die and be resurrected. So these messianic movements would come about. Jesus is not the only person in first century, that time of Israel to claim to be the Messiah. But what would happen is people would start to believe them, and then a falling would occur, and then for some reason or the other, they would obviously die, and their messianic purpose wouldn't be accomplished. So then people would realize, okay, this is not the Messiah, right? Because they didn't actually fulfill the role of the Messiah. And the Jews, they kind of thought like, oh, the Messiah, he's going to be the military conquest leader who's going to lead us into triumph, over the other nations of the world. That's my little thing of it. So that's why I bring the question: what's the motive of someone random to steal his body, to fight the Roman guards, to move the tomb? Like what skin do they have in the game? As soon as he died, like the story goes, as soon as he died, all the disciples, they just go home and just cry about it, basically. Like because they think it's over. They've been following Jesus for several years, and then he dies, and they think it's over. So the question is to you, like, why do you think a random person would steal his body? And I can't hear you unless you're in the app.
Here's the thing, man. Whatever the motive might be, we could speculate on that. I do still think it's highly likely that that's the case more than so than this guy being resurrected and happening to be God, right? I think, right?
No,
That would be,
that's not what you think. You think that he wasn't crucified.
yeah, that's what I think, right? But if I had to choose, like, something else than what I believe right now, I wouldn't choose, like, Christianity per se, right? I would choose the other one.
So if you weren't going to be a Muslim, you would reject Jesus.
Not his existence, but I would reject him being God, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Based off of the Quran. And it draws me back around. Here's a really interesting aspect of the Quran that I think draws it into question. Maybe you've never thought about this before. Okay? So,
Okay.
And this is not, this is just to throw it out there, right? Judaism, Christianity, Islam, which one came first?
Judaism.
Right. And that's the Torah and the rest of the Old Testament in those scriptures. Okay? Here's what comes next is Christianity, right?
Yeah.
What's unique about Christianity in regards or in comparison to Islam is Christianity looks back on the Old Testament and says, we affirm it. It's all true. We do not reject any of it. We don't think it's corrupted. We don't think that they were deceived. We don't have any issues with the Old Testament. We actually think that the Old Testament is pointing to the New Testament. And if you read the New Testament, they quote the Old Testament all of the time because they're trying to show the readers, look how these things are connected. Okay? Then Islam comes along and says, all of what is before is actually wrong, and we need to fix it. Why
Yeah.
why should I believe that?
Because they claim that it's been corrupted and some parts might be true, but some parts might not be true, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Can
yeah.
I ask you a question? And this is, you've obviously heard that it's corrupted. Is there anything in the scriptures right now that you could point to and say this is something that I know has been corrupted, or is this just something that you're kind of regurgitating to me?
Is this I heard one where it says the king or the ruler was 12 or ruled for 12 months and then it said 36 afterwards. Is that, do you know what I'm talking about there?
Um,
Something about a ruler ruling for 12 years and then 36, or either he was 12 or he turned 36 in age.
yeah. So I know of one. It's King. I can't remember his name. His name starts with a J, and I'm just spitballing here, but it's like in Kings, it says that he started reigning at 8 years old, and then in Chronicles, it says that he started reigning at 18 years old, or vice versa. Right? Are you looking it up?
Yeah, just we can do that one. We can do that one.
Right. So some people have tried to harmonize this. Okay. Some people have said, well, he actually began, he was inaugurated as king at 8, and then he was inaugurated at 18 again, or that he reigned twice. Here's the thing, and this is the difference between Christianity and Islam. Okay, we do not hold to the standard of perfect preservation.
That's what I'm talking about, man. We say it's corrupted.
Yeah, and but
Yeah.
here's the thing. Nothing that you've ever read of antiquity, including the Quran, is perfectly preserved. That's not how history works.
Well, it's never been changed. Quran. Not
Yeah,
once.
you don't know that because Uthman, burned a bunch of them.
Well, no. Here's the thing. He burned the ones that tried to change it,
Oh, oh,
but he kept the original one
how do you know?
because that's what. Ah, you got me there. You got me there.
Yeah,
Because it says in the Quran.
right. It's like, how do you know? What if he took a version that he liked and burned the other ones? You don't have those, so you don't know. And even now, there's still different. There's a couple different versions of the Quran that are floating around. It's not like they're
What?
all exactly the same.
There are.
Yes, I pull up like a. Oh gosh.
Do you have like a really expensive setup? Are you like a streamer?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I do have some equipment, but I wouldn't say I'm a streamer. I guess I'm live streaming now. I guess that makes me a streamer, but
Oh,
let's
you
let,
stream for a living?
let's just no. That's what I'm saying.
Uh,
Gosh dang it. You know what? We can run it back. We can run it back because I know that I have. So I'll give you an example. Okay, you have like this is chapter 37, verse 12 of the Quran. You have the Hafs version, and it says, "But you, in regards to Muhammad, wonder while they mock." And then you have the Khalaf version that says, "But I, in regards to Allah, wonder while they mock." I'm just reading these two versions.
all right. What if I told you I've seen God before? I told you that.
The problem is it's anecdotal. There's nothing like there's nothing that I can do to ever know whether or not that's true.
Well, how do you know anything is true, right? You look at reliable sources. I think I'm a pretty reliable guy, you know?
Yeah, I have no idea. Your name is user 6689944577777.
Well, how do you trust that Harvard is a good source to believe in?
How
How
do I
do you
trust
trust
the,
that?
the what?
Harvard is a Harvard
Harvard?
or a Harvard? Yeah, how do you trust that?
I mean,
How do you trust that they're saying the truth? Just because their name's Harvard or
yeah,
and
it's a
you heard
reliable
it?
source, but you should fact check them too.
How do you factor someone using another source?
Yeah, depending on the subject.
How would you ever know if a source is reliable and if they're trustworthy at all?
Yeah, and
Just
you can play this
the
game
word.
all you want, and that's why just because you said that you've seen God doesn't mean I trust you. Like I
Then
can't.
you can't really trust anything then, including the Bible, right?
No, because at the same time, you can play that game, but if Harvard releases some study, they've built some credibility and reliability, and they should create one in a sense that's fact checkable in order to see if it is reliable. And then Harvard, because they have credibility, if someone were to show why whatever they put out is false, they would probably remove or adjust it.
The problem is that Harvard isn't having the same people post the same study, right? So you call them reliable, but actually they have different people doing different studies. So each one might probably be some kind of virgin to the said thing, right? So you don't know exactly for sure who's doing what. So how could you ever trust them?
Well, Harvard is just generic, right? If Harvard puts something out, it's going to be some professor in some specific field who's doing some specific study. It's not that
How do you
Harvard
know that?
just does that. You ever looked at articles?
Yeah, but those are just words that are said by someone else, right? So you hear
Yeah.
someone else
Yeah.
talking about something.
And
Right?
the
So why can't you just trust me?
well, all I can do is just flip that back and go, so why should I trust the Quran?
Because I've seen God,
Yeah, just
and He told me the Quran was the right religion. I promise you, I don't know if you experienced this before, bro, but like when you see what I'm talking about, it's like something you never experienced. And I don't think I was hallucinating. I've never had hallucinations before in my life. I've never had anything like of the sort. Like mentally, I've never had any problem, and I've never heard anything from my doctor. Right? And like the first time I saw it, it's like an experience out of this world. It's just I can't explain it to you. That's what I saw, right? So that's and I've never seen that same thing again. So yeah,
yeah,
what do you
but
think?
it doesn't matter because I can believe that God exists and not believe that Islam is true.
Yeah, but
Like
the thing I saw said it specifically Islam is true.
that's what you were told.
Yeah, and like I was told it. Yeah, he told me to because I was losing out on what I was doing. Right, I wasn't following it well, and he told me to keep track on my deen and follow God. Right,
Yeah, and
and yeah,
and so here's why anecdote is not enough because you having that personal experience with God doesn't deal with the problems of the Quran. Right. So you having an anecdotal experience with God doesn't convince me that the Quran just didn't copy the Gospel of Thomas. You having anecdotal experience with God doesn't fix why in a supposed revelation the author of the Quran says that the stuff that comes from a man to make a baby comes from the middle of the back instead of the testicles where it actually comes from. And why would God, who's all knowing, you don't even have to be all knowing to know that. Why would he say that in the Quran? Right? Your anecdotal experience doesn't deal with that.
what would it take to convince you? What could I give you to convince you that Islam is a true religion? That what would you
That's a great question. A very great question. And I think what it would take, it's
what?
it's tough, man. It's tough.
Come on.
You-
I could tell you, just give me like cold hard proof that
Well,
Christianity is true religion.
the problem is I already see the issues in the Quran, so I would need some type of confirmation that the issues that I'm seeing aren't actually issues. That's number one. Um, and number two, I would just need good reason to believe that the Old and New Testament aren't preserved, and I don't have good reason for that.
You
Like
just told me. You agreed to that they're like you don't claim that they're preserved.
I said,
I'm sorry.
I said perfectly preserved.
Oh, preserved. If they're not, well, God made it, right? So it should be perfectly reserved.
God did not make the Old and New Testament. That's not how we
Well, he
receive
willed
the scriptures.
he willed it to be made, right? So I think if God wanted to like perform an action, it should be perfect, right? So he willed that to happen. So why would he let it be not perfectly reserved so it can't be misinterpreted or corrupted?
It can just be generally preserved and be perfectly fine. So, like, here's what you should do. You need to do some research. Not Muslim. Go atheist. Okay, go unbiased. That
Alright.
okay. Don't go Christian. Don't go Muslim. Go unbiased. Okay, you can look up a guy like Bart Ehrman. Okay, he's an ex-Christian. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I don't know what that is.
He's an ex-Christian. He's an atheist Bible scholar, and all he does is critique Christianity. Okay, that's like his whole job. He's a New Testament scholar. He
Sounds
points
pretty
out
bad.
what he says are contradictions and problems in the Bible all of the time, much of which are ridiculous, some of which should be looked at. Even him, who is a skeptic atheist scholar, whose agenda is to undermine the Bible, okay,
Yeah.
acknowledges that in the preservation of Scripture, the message of Christianity has not changed.
But dude, I have problems. Like I did some of that research myself, and
Did
I
you?
looked at the most convincing evidence, which was the Shroud of Turin, and it didn't convince me, man. It was just so many
That's
things
fine.
that
I don't believe the Shroud of Turin.
you don't.
No,
Why not?
I just don't like what is the Shroud of Turin to me. It's
You
like
don't think that that's actually the burial cloth of Jesus Christ himself?
could be, but I'm doubtful.
You're doubtful.
Yeah,
Well, that's like the most convincing evidence you have. So doesn't that like tell you something?
it is not the most convincing evidence that we have.
What is it? The most convincing evidence of Christianity?
The
I
most
thought that was.
the most convincing evidence that we have is the historical facts surrounding the resurrection of Jesus.
Oh, but I'd argue that even the Shroud of Turin is more like reliable than that, right? Because they say the thing about it takes like 8 million or 8 billion watts to make that, right? They don't even know how that thing was made, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
I
but
know.
you'd rather like stay on that than Shroud of Turin.
Yeah. I don't. This is the Shroud of Turin is neither here nor there for me. So, but
Right,
it's good talking to you, man. I'm gonna try to get somebody else
right,
up here. Um,
right.
but
Have a nice day.
yeah, you too. Peace.
Peace.
All right. Good times. User 6689944577777. Shout out to you. Um, well, how we living? I see the last comment here. It's not ever happening. Doesn't excuse that it's a possibility, though. I don't know what that's referring to. I do. I appreciate the likes, though. Appreciate the likes. Just trying to find a Muslim to convince me to be a Muslim. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Swimfly, how you doing? Doing good. Just trying to get some people in here to talk about Islam. In the meantime, anyone questions, thoughts, life? What am I? I don't even know what I'm going to do this weekend. I'm just going to hang out, enjoy my weekend, I guess. Watch some college basketball. That's probably what I'll do. Hang out with my wife. She's going to make some dinner tonight, which typically I'm the cook in my household. So I'm thankful that she's gonna make some dinner. We'll see how that goes. It'll be fine. It'll be great. And tomorrow, I am getting lunch with a friend tomorrow. That'll be good. That'll be good. Corey, what's up, dog? You missed it, Corey. Was having a good conversation. The bummer, though, is really. We'll see. We'll figure it out. This is not the ideal time to go live. So I'd like to go at night, but typically I kind of just go to bed early. Oh, nice, Corey. Yeah, good times. So I'd like to go live at night. It'd be easier to just get things more views, to have more conversations. But you know, we'll see what happens. I don't know how to. Rapid speed, sir. No problem. It's like your name in the chat. I had to click on you, see what your name was. Um, yeah, Islam. There really is a. There's just a myriad of problems with it. Um, it it the more I like read the Quran and do study, like it's uh it's it's more of like an anti-Trinitarian propaganda than it is built on any like firm foundation of its own, which I think it's interesting. Like when you try to get Muslims to defend why Islam is true, their go-to is to try to disprove Christianity. And yeah, random people stealing Jesus' body. That's what's point. It's like that doesn't even make sense. But their go-to is to try to disprove Christianity, but they don't really have any clear like foundation for why Islam is true other than the Quran. Other than the Quran. The problem, and that's the problem. Like when the book is the thing that you put all your chips in, then you make it very easy to critique. Because all you have to do is just start going through it, and it's just like, oh man, this is really rough. This is really rough. There's a lot of copying from Old Testament and New Testament, just changing stories, right? Saying things that aren't true, that were impossible. So I'd have to find it, but like there's a story about like they'll bring up Moses and Pharaoh throughout the Quran, and there's a story of Pharaoh crucifying people. The story of Pharaoh crucifying people in the Quran. What's the problem? The Romans invented crucifixion thousands of years later. There is no crucifixion. It didn't happen. And when you say that your book is the very word of God in himself, you put yourself in a really, really bad place, because all you have to do is just grab a line and go, then what is this doing here? Because God wouldn't say that. God would know that Pharaoh never did that to anybody, because that form of unaliving someone did not exist. You're picking up what I'm putting down. Walker, if you're still in the chat, yeah, shout out to you. Now I know why your name is Swimfly. Janie, if you're still there, thanks. I love your hair too, even though I can't see your hair. But yeah, and you know, I've been reading through it. It's a tough read. I'm not gonna lie. It's a real tough read. I will reference a book though. It's from a scholar that I actually know. She's awesome, and she wrote a book called "A Short Guide to Islam: A Biblical Response to the Faith of Our Muslim Neighbors." And man, really good stuff. She just does a good job of kind of debunking myths, just explaining what Muslims believe, the differences between Islam and Christianity, and it's like $11 on Amazon, and it's a very popular level work, right? You don't have to be you don't have to be a genius to read it, and so I would totally recommend that. but I'll give it another go. My wife just got home, so I might go hang out with her unless I can get somebody else that wants to pop in here. But I don't know if I've got a Muslim in here. Plot twist: they're bald. Um, I hope not. I think it was a. I'm assuming it was a woman. So, uh, um, but Womb to Tomb. I did know it was the infancy gospel of Thomas, and but I was second guessing myself, so I didn't want to say infancy because obviously it's about Jesus as a child. Um, yeah. Do I think Jabril was a demon when Muhammad met him in the dark cave? I mean, it's only one or two options, right? Either A, the whole thing's made up. That's option one. Or option two is just the literal, Satan masquerades in as an angel of light, and he tricks people. And with how large Islam is, I think it's very plausible that he had an encounter with Satan. Like there is a world where he really is quote unquote receiving revelation. It's just not from God, right? Um, it's just not from God, and that could easily be the case. Um, so yeah, but that's one of those things. It's like I'll never know. I just know that like it's like either way, whatever Islam is not true. Um, how do I feel about atheists? I mean, I feel terrible for atheists, and just off the reality, it's like they don't know God, and so just like I feel terrible for Muslims in that sense, right? It's like I want them to know who the one true God is, um, and particularly um, the atheists who claim to be Christians at one time and left the faith. Um, I feel bad for them because often they're just kind of most of the time they're just leaving like American evangelicalism. That's the thing that they really hate and miss who Jesus actually is. Um, yeah, the same Scott Eddy. Gonna be face to face with them one day, and I think what is interesting is the level of mockery. I think it's very exposing that there's some hard issues there. I think my favorite question to ask an atheist is if Christianity was true, would you become a Christian? And when they say no, right? Because this Muslim guy earlier, he asked me what it would take to convince me that Islam is true. It would take so much because he not only it's like you have to prove Islam and disprove Christianity and Judaism. Like there's so many hoops to jump through. But if in reality we came to the conclusion, oh wait, Islam is true, then I would be an absolute fool to reject it. And in the same way, what I often see from these atheists is they'll be like, even if Christianity is true, I'll reject it. I won't worship that God. Brr, 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 brr. And it's like, that's just foolishness. That's absolute foolishness. We should want the truth and to live our lives in accordance to with what is true, even if our feelings don't always like it. And that's a big problem with when you talk about like and well, sorry, I'm reading a comment. Can you explain why would God create someone if they know they won't live for Him? Why would He create someone if He knows why the person won't live for Him? Brandon, if you wanna hop in the guest, we can chop it up. If you're a Muslim and you want to convince me, go ahead. Okay, request to join. You're a Christian. Convince me I'm a Christian. What do you can? I'm already convinced. I was speaking hypothetically. I'm a Christian. I'm convinced Christianity is true. But it says, can you explain why God would create someone if they know they won't live for Him? Right? Oh, that's boring. No, I want a real Muslim. And there, there's a myriad of answers to this. Okay, some people hold to like universalism that all people ultimately will come to a relationship with God. I don't think that that's true, right? For me, it simply comes down to this question. Okay, is God capable, and does He have the right? So both. Is He capable? Like, is He able to do this? And does He have the right to do this while sustaining to be good? And the thing that I'm questioning is God capable, and does He have the right to create morally free agents? That is, beings that exist apart from Him morally. They're independent morally from God. Is He capable of it? And does He have the right to do it? And I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. God can create morally independent agents, which means I am an agent who makes moral decisions that they do not fall back on God. If my dog's laying down right now, if I decided to kick my dog, I would never, Nico, I love you. That would not be God's fault. And no one would blame God for it. It would be my fault. Right? So if he can create them, then it draws into question, does He have the right to? Does He have the right to create someone who's morally independent of Him, even with the possibility that they would reject Him? And I don't know how you could get around saying no. And it even draws into question God's goodness if He creates us without the ability to choose Him. Because then we're either robots or we're slaves. And then if we're robots, like, okay, then like whatever, it doesn't even matter, because like, who cares about the existence of robots? They're just gonna exist and then not exist or whatever. It doesn't really matter. They don't really feel anything. Or He'd make us slaves if we have no will, which just kind of draws some issues there. And so if you establish that God is capable, and has the right to create a morally free agent, then you just have to wrestle with, what does it mean if that morally free agent rejects God? And I think there's three options. One, ultimately God will redeem everyone. I don't think that that's what's going to happen, but that's what some people believe, universalism. The second is annihilation. So it's the idea that these people that reject God, they'll just be eliminated one day, right? And they'll cease to exist. And third would be eternal conscious torment. However, I do not think, you kind of mentioned being infinitely punished for a finite crime. I don't think that's the case. I would encourage you to look up C.S. Lewis's explanation of hell. And it's this idea of a continued rejection of God into the afterlife. He actually wrote a book called The Great Divorce, very fascinating book. And in that book, a bus full of people go from hell to heaven. And one by one, as they get back on the bus, to go back to hell. Because ultimately they don't want God. They don't want to be with God. They don't want the benefits of God. So they get what they truly want, which is eternity without Him, even if it leads to their own misery. That's very long-winded, but there you go. Thoughts on Jesus saying that only the Father is good? I don't think that Jesus says only the Father is good. In that passage, Jesus says, why do you call me good? He says that God is good. Don't get me wrong. But he says, why do you call me good? And I think if you actually if you actually see the general message of the passage, it's that God, Jesus, is pointing out to the man that he's rejecting the first two commandments, that the man actually worships money instead of God, and his direct application is to give away his money and follow Jesus. That's how he's going to obey the first command in that passage. The first command is don't have any other gods before me. That's what Jesus is pointing out to the man. And how is the man going to follow that commandment? By following Jesus. So that's either blasphemy or a claim of deity. Got another question. What's your opinion on the prophecies of the future that Prophet Muhammad did? Yeah. It's funny. That's a great question. I actually want some Muslims to present, like all the prophecies that I hear from Muhammad are like, the Quran predicted that there'd be like skyscrapers one day. It's like, okay, like such a vague reference. Like I would like to see some Muslims actually dive in deeper into some of the more robust prophecies that Muhammad made, but I just don't see that a lot. And so what I mainly see is just a defense against the Quran, just as a whole, right? That's typically where things seem to go. So yeah. Well, nobody's hopping in, and it's been about an hour for me. Yeah, Rapid Speedster. I gave you the long roundabout answer. I would C.S. Lewis, The Great Divorce. Easy book to read. Interesting concept, but I've been on for about an hour. I think I'm gonna hop off and go hang out with my wife. So, I'll answer this last question. It's over on YouTube. See you, Corey. And it's Sam. What's his name? Sam Shaman. I don't even know how to say his last name. My thoughts on him. I don't really have any thoughts on him, to be honest. I don't really watch his content, so I don't know much about him. So no comment. But all right, peace out. Y'all enjoy the weekend. Bye.